Do you remember the movie Field of Dreams? And the phrase referring to a baseball field, build it and they will come? Well, it's been said of Presbyterians, if you're planning a meeting or an event, offer food and they will come. Here at Morrisville Presbyterian, we believe in that theory. We have the Be Informed Luncheon series and Heritage Luncheons, youth club dinners on Wednesdays during the school year, church-wide outdoor and Atlas indoor picnics, Lenten suppers, the Shrove Tuesday pancake supper, and the Easter breakfast between the two services, the feast which follows the hike against hunger, not to mention the every Sunday post-worship fellowship hour, which naturally includes food. Yes, just about any time Presbyterians gather, we make it a meal. So, I'm guessing you won't have any problem with this next part of the sermon. I'd like each of you to take a moment now and think of your favorite food. If you're 12 or under, maybe it's macaroni and cheese or peanut butter and jelly. If you're a teenager, perhaps it's pizza. If you're a little older, maybe your favorite food is something simple and characteristically American, such as a big juicy burger, char-grilled to perfection, and garnished with a slice of bright red, homegrown tomato, lettuce, and honest-to-goodness loaded with calories, mayonnaise. Don't forget potato salad and baked beans on the side and a big glass of your favorite beverage. That would be a soft drink, of course. Perhaps your taste in food is a little bit more expensive, center-cut filet mignon, medium well done, as only the kitchen at Park's Grill can prepare it. Or maybe your favorite food is slightly more health smart, salmon, blackened on the outside but succulent on the inside, surrounded by a medley of vegetables and a small portion of long grain wild rice. We don't want to overdo the carbs. For the vegetarians and vegans among us, perhaps it's grilled shish kebab minus the meat. Or maybe you're like me and your favorite food is the traditional Thanksgiving dinner, tender, moist turkey with plenty of stuffing, mashed potatoes and gravy, not to mention dinner rolls, fresh from the oven, smothered in real butter. And don't forget the pumpkin, apple, and pecan pies. You can't eat just one kind. Topped with real whipped cream, nobody counts the calories on Thanksgiving. Or perhaps we're being just a little bit too nutritious in our list of favorite foods and we should cut straight to the Mississippi mud pie or raspberry chocolate cheesecake or your favorite flavor of Uncle Dave's homemade ice cream. Is anybody getting hungry? I don't know about you, but all I have to do is think about food and my mouth begins to water. I feel hungry. But when I say I'm hungry, it means something altogether different than it does when a poor child in Haiti who eats dirt says those words. When I say I'm hungry, it means I haven't eaten since having my breakfast of oatmeal and soy milk and a bottle of high-protein boost for breakfast, and now it's 11 o'clock, and I better start thinking about lunch. But when a marginalized person in a developing country says he is hungry, it may mean, I haven't eaten since I had a bowl of rice 2 days ago, and before that, it was 3 days. And when a young child from a poor neighborhood in Trenton says she's hungry, it may mean that the family's food card has been depleted, and the groceries they receive from the MPC Food Center are gone and the cupboard is bare. The thing about food, as with so many of the world's resources, is that some people have plenty while others have so little. Here are some facts to consider. According to the Christian advocacy and relief organization Bread for the World, the number of hungry people worldwide has dropped significantly over the past 2 decades. But 795 million people continue to struggle with hunger every day. Every year, 2.6 million children die as a result of hunger-related causes. The year 2008 was especially deadly. That year, nearly 9 million children died before they reached their 5th birthday. 1/3 of those deaths, or approximately 3 million, were due directly or indirectly to hunger and malnutrition. Malnutrition is not having enough nourishing food with adequate amounts of protein, vitamins, minerals, and calories to support physical and mental growth and development. Children who survive early childhood malnutrition suffer irreversible harm, including poor physical growth, compromised immune function, and impaired cognitive ability. But this isn't just a problem in developing countries. In the United States, nearly 16 million children, or 1 in 5, live in households that struggle to put food on the table. In the United States, hunger is not caused by a scarcity of food, but rather the continued prevalence of poverty. To the surprise of many, according to Bread for the World, statistically, a majority of Americans, that is 51.4%, will live in poverty at some point prior to reaching age 65. That means that any one of us or our friends or family members may be affected one day. Although we live in the world's wealthiest nation, a reported 14.5% of U.S. households, that's nearly 49 million Americans, struggle to put food on the table. And here in this community, more than 50% of students in the Morrisville School District receive reduced or free lunches, an indication that right here, families are struggling to put food on the table. While most of us enjoy 3 square meals a day and more, many people in the world do not. In fact, many people in the world would love to have what we throw away every day. But my purpose this morning is not to make us feel guilty for having enough to eat. Rather, my purpose is simply to remind us that many people in the world do not have enough to eat. And as Christians, we should care about that. As Christians, we are called to respond with compassion to their need. The Bible is very clear about this. You may remember the time when Jesus was talking with a lawyer. The subject of the conversation was love and what it means to love your neighbor. And he told the parable of the Good Samaritan. In that story, the Samaritan sees a person in need, a man who has been beaten, robbed, and left for dead along the highway. The Samaritan responds with compassion, caring for the wounds of the robbery victim. Jesus' point is that love for neighbor must find its expression in compassion, that is, in significant acts of kindness. And you may recall, Jesus ends that story with the words to his audience and to us, "Go and do likewise." Jesus told another story, which we call the parable of the sheep and the goats. In this parable, Jesus says that when we take care of the stranger, provide clothing for the down and out, take care of the sick, visit the prisoner, and provide food for the hungry, when we do all these things, it's as if we are doing them for Jesus himself. So we know that people are hungry. In fact, almost 1 in 7, nearly 1 billion of our neighbors in this global village do not have enough to eat. As Christians, we should do something to help alleviate that situation. And while in the end, it may take some significant systemic changes involving economic development and agricultural innovations to solve the hunger problem on a long-term basis, there are people who are hungry today. What can we do to respond to their need? Here are just 3 simple suggestions. First, here at MPC, one of our most active ministries is the Food Center. Next Sunday, or any Sunday during August, why not bring in a donation or a bag of donations to the Food Center? According to Acting Director Carol Romano, what the center can use most are the following: tuna, canned meat, peanut butter, and cereal. I guess those would mostly be protein goods: tuna, canned meat, peanut butter, and cereal. Whatever we provide, the Food Center will give away to people who really need it. And what the Food Center can actually use even more than food donations are additional volunteers. Can you volunteer once a week? Can you volunteer twice a month? Can you volunteer once a month? Yes, distribution takes place on Wednesday mornings, and maybe you're not able to help at that time because you work during that time, but there are other tasks to be done that happen at other times besides Wednesday morning. Can you give an hour or a couple of hours? Your gift of food and or your valuable time can make a real difference to a hungry person in Morrisville or Trenton. And yes, there are hungry people in Morrisville and Trenton. Second, next spring, when we take up the one great hour of sharing offering, let us be generous. For 36% of undesignated gifts go to the Presbyterian Hunger Program to alleviate hunger and eliminate its causes. Speaking of the Presbyterian Hunger Program, you can learn more about it by going to the denomination's website, pcusa.org, and you can make a contribution directly online. You don't have to wait until next spring. Third, if you want to do some permanent good, you can support Marian Medical Mission in its effort to provide clean drinking water to some of the poorest countries in Africa. Marian Medical Mission is ecumenical, but it is heavily supported by Presbyterians, both in terms of volunteers as well as contributions. Its stated purpose is to show the love of Christ through projects that directly impact the African people, stressing self-help and sustainability. Specifically, Marian Medical Mission specializes in installing shallow wells in the countries of Zambia, Malawi, and Tanzania at the cost of $400 per well. Each well provides a village of as many as 300 people with clean, safe drinking water. Each year, Marian Medical Mission manages to install more than 2,500 of these new wells. And one of the great things about Marian Medical Mission is that to the degree that it's possible, the parts for these wells are manufactured in Africa, and most of the work is done by Africans. It's an amazing ministry. In our gospel lesson, Jesus saw that people were hungry, and using the resources at hand, he provided supper for 5,000. There are 2 schools of thought about this miracle. Some Christians interpret it literally, understanding that Jesus literally multiplied the 5 loaves and 2 fishes so that there was plenty enough for 5,000. Others understand this account to mean that as Jesus and the disciples began to pass out the food they had, as they freely shared the 5 loaves and 2 fishes provided by the boy, their act of sharing encouraged others to bring out their food and share it freely as well. until there was plenty to go around. The second interpretation may not even seem like a miracle. Yet, if we think about it, there may be something of the miraculous in that second interpretation after all. 5,000 people had come to the lakeside. Of all those people, so the theory goes, some had brought food, others had not. And those who had food were keeping it in their picnic baskets, lest they be expected to share with those around them and risk not having enough for themselves. But once Jesus and his disciples began passing out food, people's hearts were softened. Selfishness turned to generosity, and people who had food also began to share. At first glance, this interpretation seems to call into question Jesus' power, but the more I consider it, I don't think this understanding of what happened necessarily diminishes Jesus or his power. Sometimes the greatest miracle is a changed heart. In any case, the point is the people were hungry. God in Christ recognized their need and responded with supper for 5,000. This story appears in all four Gospels. In the Synoptic Gospels, that is Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the disciples were reluctant to help. Their first response, send the people away so they can buy something to eat. In today's reading from John's Gospel, Andrew does all the talking and voices skepticism that they can pull this off. Referring to the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, he says to Jesus, but what are they among so many people? But in the end, the disciples become partners in Jesus' miracle. According to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the disciples help with the distribution of food to the hungry crowd. And even in John's Gospel, they pick up the leftovers. Today, there are nearly 1 billion hungry people in this global village in which we live. That might seem like an overwhelming problem, and there's no disputing it is a big problem. But let's not take the disciples, let the hungry solve their own problem approach. After all, much hunger results from drought, famine, warfare, government corruption, and extreme poverty, overwhelming circumstances which are beyond the control of the average person, and in many cases beyond the control of the average person to solve. Around the world and here in the United States, many of those who are hungry are children, for whom poverty and hunger are accidents of birth. So, my friends, with the love of Christ in our hearts, let us become partners in a miracle. God has blessed us abundantly. Out of our abundance, let us freely offer what we have so that in the end, no one is hungry. May it be so. Amen.